Hey, you're listening to Wrestling Roundup, FreeFM 89.0. This is Grady Hooker, and again, no one live on Skype. It's the dentist again. Josh is still getting his teeth fixed up, and Brando's still at school, so you get to listen to me for another half an hour. Boom. So I've got nothing written down. I just watched Raw yesterday when this came out, so we'll start off at the top of that. Seth Rollins starting his feud with Jon Stewart off the Daily Show. So they'd been going back and forth. The WWE made sure you did not forget about them, especially since they kept airing the video promos over and over and over. Pretty much Seth Rollins said, I'm going to recap it again, that he would make the Daily Show watchable. Jon Stewart fired back. Seth showed up on his show, invited him to Raw. He showed up on Raw. He tormented him, and then on Raw, boom, Randy Orton comes out in an attempt to help, I'm putting air quotes here, help Seth Rollins, but it just led to Jon Stewart swiftly kicking him in the nuts. So I don't know. They then asked Jon Stewart if he would be back to stay, competitor, commentator, and he pretty much said no. So I'm not entirely sure. I think Jon Stewart has done his part in the feud. It was a funny little addition, but isn't the main part. The main part still seems to be that slow burn for Randy Orton. He's doing things that are helpful, but Seth is not seeing them as helpful. Like he said, him coming down and distracting him to stop him from curb stomping Jon Stewart was helpful because if he'd hit Jon Stewart, he would have been sued. So it's helpful in a way, but not helpful. But anybody that is on this side of the sun knows that it's going to be leading to Randy Orton flipping everybody. I'm forgetting the finish to the main event here. But it was Roman Reigns versus Seth Rollins. Randy Orton came out and he was standing in Roman Reigns' corner for a lot of the match. I remember that part. I was a little shaky because I had to speed through it. But again, it's just leading to that match. One of the more things that is happening now throughout the entire shows is the Intercontinental title. Technically still Bad News Barrett's. I've lost track of it. I think Dean Ambrose stole it at Fastlane. Then R-Truth stole it on SmackDown. Dean Ambrose asked Truth for it back, got it back. Then again this time on Raw, R-Truth stole it again, but then Luke Harper came out, kicked him in the face, and stole it. Luke Harper brought it out for his match. Then Barrett tried to take it again, then Ambrose stopped him, then Harper kicked someone else, and it's all leading up to that WrestleMania ladder match for the Intercontinental title, which is important for two reasons. It's important for reason number one, to elevate that Intercontinental title back up. And it's important for reason number two, which is the nostalgia factor. The Money in the Bank briefcase match started off at WrestleMania. It was 6 men. I think we're going to be harkening back to that. We're going to have 6 people in this match. And it is also going back to the first ever ladder match for the exact same style Intercontinental title, Shawn Michaels, Razor Ramon. So you got both of those nostalgia factors hitting you. In terms of who's in the match, I think announced it's Bad News Barrett and R-Truth. Quite obviously, it's Dean Ambrose, Luke Harper, Dolph Ziggler, and number 6, surprisingly to me, but he's being inserted into the feud, Daniel Bryan. Now, Daniel Bryan and Dolph Ziggler were mounting that thing on social media where you were meant to be petitioning for them to have a match at WrestleMania, and it was meant to be a great match since Bryan wasn't going to be in the main event. But it seems like they're in the same match, but they're not singles matching, which I think is alright, because if you remember back a couple of pay-per-views ago, the match between two of them, it was Harper and I think Ziggler at the time, ladder match as well, was amazing. I think it was TLC. So I think all of these men have been proved to bring it, and can put on a great match. And I think a couple of them have even proven themselves in ladder matches. So that match has a chance to steal the light from a couple of the main event matches if they do not live up to what people are expecting. But that's my wild card match that I think will go really well and be a match favorite at the end. In terms of the US title, John Cena pretty much came down and said, Rusev's not giving me a rematch, I'm just going to enter myself in the Battle Royal. And then Stephanie McMahon comes down and says, you just can't enter yourself into the Battle Royal. And then Cena goes off, that's what everybody's done, they just come down, said it, and they're in it. But Stephanie McMahon pretty much barred him from being in any match at WrestleMania unless Rusev grants him a rematch. Then Rusev came down and said, no, you're not going to get it. So for the next, how many? 3 weeks? I think it's 3 weeks at this point. The next 3 weeks of Raw and SmackDown, probably just Raw, Cena's now going to be attempting to get Rusev to give him the rematch that we all know he will. And then we get another fine match. I know people have been picking apart their match at Fastlane, Cena's spot calling and all of that. But ignoring all of that, purely from a fan's standpoint, watching the match for what it is, it's a wrestling match. It was a great match. I'm sorry, all of you people who disagree with that, but I enjoyed the match, and I thought the two brought it, and that Rusev showed he could play with the big boys, which we already knew about John Cena. As much as you hate him, with the right person, he puts on a great match. And again, pretty sure back at Fastlane, even before Fastlane, everybody knew that those two would be rematching at WrestleMania. It was interesting that Cena, passed out, but I guess he did have the swift kick to the nuts before it, which weakened him, I don't know, and led to him losing the match. So he's got some beef there, and he's got a reason to ask for that rematch. How he's going to get it, I don't know. Stealing the title and saying, I'll give it back to you if we have a rematch, not really going to work, since they're doing a lot of that with the Intercontinental title. So I don't know, we'll have to see. It'll probably be some patriotic thing this time, possibly. So an announcement they did make, again, slightly spoiled on social media. It is the next inductee to the WWE Hall of Fame for the year of 2015. It's the Diva one, and it is Alundra Blaze. Also happens to be our classic entrance theme of this week. She also wrestled as Medusa and famously dropped the WWF Women's Championship in a trash can on an episode of WCW Nitro after she defected. So you can listen to her theme song now. And you're back with Wrestling Roundup, FreeFM 89.0, Grady Hooker. So I just talked about Alundra Blaze being officially announced. I think there's also a couple of other names. Kevin Nash has been supposedly spoiled in the 31 version of the WWE magazine. And so again, that just follows the theme of them spoiling them. And I believe there's a Japanese wrestling superstar who they're going to announce in Japan. I believe there was also another one. I'm not going to get names just in case, but I think they've deferred that, because it would be Randy Savage, Rikishi, Kevin Nash, the Bushwhackers, Alundra Blaze, Arnold, and the Japanese wrestler whose name I'm blanking on right now, which would pretty much fill in all the categories they normally do. They got their main eventer, their two mid-carders, their tag team, their diva, and their international star. So I think that's a full, what do you call it? It's not a card. Full group, class. There you go, the full class of inductees. But I wouldn't be surprised if they added that extra person. So we'll talk now a couple of other things that happened on Raw. Paige was getting her rematch against Nikki Bella for the Divas title. She had to win. Paige was almost the next Divas champion. But Brie decided to poke her nose in. We all saw that coming. They weren't going to let a title switch like that happen. And afterwards, we get the return of a familiar face. We get AJ Lee. And she came out and I wouldn't say saved Paige. I'd say attacked the Bellas. There's a slight difference. She's not friends with Paige. She just hates the Bellas. As she said in an interview, my enemy's enemy is my... And then just left it. And said that they think they're friends. So I believe we're just going to be heading into an AJ and Paige versus the Bella Twins match at WrestleMania, whether it's a tag team or a fatal four-way. If you asked me 2 weeks ago, I believe I was saying a fatal four-way between these people. Definitely leaning more towards a tag team match. I don't know if we want to give away... not give away, really. Put a Divas title match on the card. They generally shy away from that, I want to say. Of course, last year we had the Invitational, where pretty much everybody came in, but I think they're building more towards a tag match. But what they do after that could be a fatal four-way. It could be something preferably involving the title, as AJ Paige probably deserve those title runs. Not saying that the Bellas don't, but, you know, they've had their time. We also got a match that a couple of us were predicting would be at WrestleMania. The Usos and Naomi versus Kid Cesaro and Natalya. That six-man tag was, I want to say Brandon's pick to replace the tag team titles match at WrestleMania. Obviously, they're going to be continuing with the feud, the Usos, Kid and Cesaro feud. So, I'm leaning more towards just a bland match. By bland, I mean plain, not the match content, as Kid and Cesaro can bring it, and it will be good. I've been using that phrase a lot today. But it might not be that six-man tag, or intergender tag, because we just saw that for free on Raw. So it's a little weird to give it to us again at WrestleMania. Then again, we've also seen the tag title match before, and they'd be giving that us again. There's always the chance they'll go with the multi-team tag team match. So throw in, who else is still around? The Ascension, Primetime Players, those guys. Have them in, have a fatal four-way tag team match for it. But you've still got to get 30 men to fill in the Battle Royal as well. But other than those, and maybe the Divas, there's a lot of singles matches on this card, and the Intercontinental title. So there's definitely going to be enough superstars to fill in the Battle Royal. And the Battle Royal, I believe, Zack Ryder, Jack Swagger, Adam Rose, Fandango, The Miz, I want to say that's all that have announced themselves. Mizdow will probably find his way in there, as will probably like Los Matadors and all those tag teams who are doing nothing at that point. And Curtis Axel, Axelmania, which also means Ryback's in it. See, I'm remembering more people. Last night on Raw, Axelmania was quite hot. Crowd were getting into it. Sure, he lost to John Cena in half a second, but, you know, Axelmania is heating up, and I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Axelmania win the trophy. But I'm also leaning towards Mizdow / Sandow. He also seems to be getting that breakaway. But you can also see that ending Axelmania could also be used as a source of heat. Whereas if you had someone who you're trying to turn, I can't think of anyone right now. We'll just use Jack Swagger as an example. Comes down to like final 3. Jack Swagger throws Axelmania out and then gets tipped over himself. But then everybody's going to hate Jack Swagger because he ended Axelmania. So that's the point there. Or they could just let him win it. Even though we saw with Cesaro, winning it does not mean much. Although he is now a tag team champion, so he's at least holding gold or bronze. I don't know enough entrants yet. It's good that they actually announced the amount of people, that it's going to be a 30-man. I believe last year it was a 31-man? 29 maybe? But with Daniel Bryan in the Intercontinental title match, if you got to wonder where that leaves Sheamus, which probably means Sheamus is going to be in the Battle Royal which also means there's a high chance he'll come out and win it. And whether we actually see Sheamus, because we're having his video packages played for a while now, and he hasn't emerged or given a date. So he might show up next week, he might show up the week before WrestleMania, on WrestleMania, the Raw after WrestleMania. You'd want to think that they'd pull in their big star Sheamus before WrestleMania and build him for the card and not just throw him in, which makes me think that he'll be back next week or the week after, not just the week before. But yeah, that is currently my Sheamus prediction, but he will probably just end up in the Battle Royal. I don't see a singles match with him. It probably doesn't help that he's returning from injury, so he doesn't have any ongoing feuds, unless he does do the rumoured Authority Stooge spot. So I talked about the tag teams, the Ascension. So they are our current entrance theme of the week. It's the Ascension's Rebellion. Hey, you're listening to FreeFM 89.0, Grady Hooker, Wrestling Roundup, Real Community Radio, and all the other slogans. So we're 2/3 of the way through. Hold on, you just got those 8 minutes left. And you can listen to me for those 8 minutes. Whether I'm going to run out of material or not, different question. Roman Reigns, Brock Lesnar. We got that definitely built up with a promo from Paul Heyman and then a retaliation from Reigns. It was some of the best promo work we've seen, which is great coming out of Heyman. As we've seen with Brock Lesnar lately, a feud with Brock Lesnar is essentially just a feud with Heyman until the night. So hopefully that plays out really well. Again, I don't know how many times I can say this, still think Roman Reigns was the right guy for the job. And we'll just move on. There's not much to say about that. They're definitely building Bray Undertaker. He burnt a casket, which I'm guessing is symbolic. It's a metaphor. And will we see him show up? I'm definitely hearing a lot of Bray coming out and The Undertaker just not showing up. I've heard everything. I've heard Bray Wyatt coming up, The Undertaker not showing up. I've heard him showing up and beating Bray. I've heard him showing up and losing to Bray. I've heard him showing up and leaving without a match. I'm hearing everything about this. And that means one thing. Nobody knows what's happening, and that's a good thing. So, in past times, it's been fairly obvious what's going to happen, minus the streak being broken. Some people saw it coming, some didn't. But generally, most stuff's predictable coming up. Like, we may be off here and there. Like I said, Fatal 4-Way for the Intercontinental title. It was a 6-way ladder match. Still got 4 of the 6 men right, and still called that it was going to be a multi-man. But Undertaker Bray is one of those wild card matches that can go either way. It could not happen, it could happen. If it does happen, it could go either way. You could have Bray winning, you could have Undertaker winning, you could have a no contest. You could have anything. And that's great. I think, even without The Undertaker showing up, that Bray Wyatt is doing a damn good job at hyping this match. And I don't think Undertaker will show up, on Raw at least. I don't think he'll show up before the match. I think he will show up at WrestleMania on the day, and that'll be the first time. Of course, he'll be wrestling in the Performance Center to get that ring rust off, if he is actually going to be wrestling, but I don't think we will see him appear in any other way. Like, we could see him on a video, we could see him via satellite, air quotes again, but I don't think we will see him live and in person until WrestleMania. And at that point, I still don't know if he's going to be wrestling. Most likely, I'd say that with the build, and there'd be a lot of people annoyed if The Undertaker did not wrestle. But again, that's up to him. He has done his due. He's done his wrestling days. And I think nobody would be surprised or disappointed if Bray Wyatt did in fact hurt him across the river Styx. I think it's a Hell reference. I saw it in a visual novel, a comic. But basically, if he retired after this match, I think it's time. We've got Triple H Sting. So Triple H is still building without Sting. Sting very rarely shows up. But again, this is another match where you don't need Sting to show up. See, that's the thing. Lesnar, Sting, and Undertaker. that's 3 people out of 6 who are in the 3 main event matches for WrestleMania not showing up regularly. Presumably Bray, Undertaker, Sting, Triple H, and the main event title match is going to be the 3 top card matches. And 3 out of 6 people are not showing up. So Triple H versus Sting, Triple H is pulling that match himself. Roman Reigns, Brock Lesnar, luckily Paul Heyman stepped in, so there's at least 2 people in that. And Bray Wyatt, Undertaker, Bray Wyatt's the only one building it. So it's interesting that they're keeping 3 of the biggest stars off of TV. But also, those matches are being built in a unique way. I'm not as interested in the Triple H Sting one as the Bray Undertaker one, though. I will say that. So just before we end, I'm going to flip it over, talk a little about UFC, only because I watched that pay-per-view. It was the first one I watched live. And I got to see Ronda Rousey's 14-second win. That was an impressive match. And it was amazing. But something that was in the background, I know they at least acknowledged Brock Lesnar was in the crowd. And with all these rumors where it's like, well, Brock Lesnar's contract runs out at WrestleMania. Will he re-sign with WWE? Will he leave to the UFC? Will they keep the title on him? If they keep the title on him, will he stay? Will he leave, go to UFC with the title, and they'll have to drop it in another way? Will Reigns pick up the title? And I think him showing up at UFC might not be a definite sign, hey, I'm going to sign with UFC, but more of a, hey, WWE, I can do this. Come on, you better get your A into gear. And I think it may have lit them to do that. I have a feeling WWE do not want to let Lesnar go, but Lesnar does want to go. I've heard he wasn't 100% during his UFC run, and he's still got titles. But that he wants to go back and prove himself with a couple more matches. I think, I want to say in this current climate, if he does leave and he does all the UFC stuff, I don't think there'll be another WWE run in his future. Mostly because by the time he comes back, he'll be very aged. Fighting in the UFC definitely ages you a lot. But, you know, never say never. But it is definitely interesting heading into it because the main story behind the Reigns-Lesnar match is you have that feud that's going on, Heyman's building it and stuff, but you've also, under the hood, if you're paying attention, you've got the contract negotiations. Whereas if he's going to go to UFC, they're going to need to know before WrestleMania, and there's no way he's keeping the title. If he's going to stay, it could be because they're offering him the title to keep, or it could be that he is still going to lose to Reigns. So there's so many different ways that match can go because of a number of different factors. I'm unsure at this point. I still want to say that Reigns is going to pick up the title and that Lesnar, not full-time, but isn't just going to abruptly leave. So, you know, come back. He's going to have maybe a rematch at Extreme Rules and then, you know, fade out rather than just cut to black. I think that's a lot better. You know, we've had a lot of the cut to black leavings lately. And luckily I don't think the roster's hurt too much. I think they've built up enough of the younger talent to handle it. Because, you know, you got Rollins, Reigns, Ambrose, Bryan. I'm blanking on names, but you've spread them throughout the card. And I think WrestleMania 31 is going to be good. I think it could be one of the better WrestleManias if everything is pulled off. They're definitely building to it the right way. I like the multi-man matches. You got the Battle Royal and you got the Bad News Barrett one. Even though it's a little obvious who's going to be in Barrett's, you've still got, you know, anybody could be in it. They could put a 7th man in last minute. Maybe that's Sheamus' spot. It's not unheard of. So, I'll leave you with that. Think about what you think is going to happen in WrestleMania 31. What is it, 3 weeks away now? You know, you can send it to us on Twitter, at Wrestling Radio, or on our Facebook, facebook.com/Wrestling Roundup Radio, or on our highly outdated website, wrestlingroundup.host22.com, wrestlingroundup.host22.com. Also, just before we go, we had a special interview again, I'll mention it, with third generation independent wrestling star Mike Hart. Yes, he is a member of the Hart family, and that's up on our YouTube and our social media, so check that out. I'll see you next week.